Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
Woman sells stroller at flea market. Next day, she gets an unexpected call. This stroller appeared very ordinary. Even the mother who sold it at a local flea market had no idea that a huge secret was hidden inside. So when she found a buyer and traded it in for cash, she figured she would never see it again. But that was far from the truth, because when the buyer came back to her, it completely turned her life upside down. Megan shifted from one foot to the other, glancing around the bustling flea market. Rows of tables and tarps stretched out in every direction, covered in everything from old trinkets and toys to clothes and furniture. Megan's little stall looked modest but organized, a collection of items she had pulled out from her home. Most of the things were outgrown baby clothes, toys, and accessories from when her son was younger. Now that he was old enough for preschool, these things were just taking up space. The primary item she hoped to sell that day was the vintage stroller she'd bought secondhand years ago. It was large, with a shiny white body and polished metal wheels that still gleamed after all this time. Megan had loved it when she first bought it, drawn to its classic design and solid build. The elderly lady she'd bought it from told her it was an antique, even claiming she had been placed in it as a baby. It was a lovely thought, imagining the stroller carrying generations of babies, but Megan had no use for it anymore. And as the day wore on, it seemed everyone walking around on the flea market thought the same thing. A few people stopped by to glance at her items, picking up baby clothes and toys here and there, but no one seemed interested in the stroller. Megan realized she had priced it high at $200, 0 cents, which she thought was fair given its unique vintage charm. It was the centerpiece of her stand and would probably require a unique buyer, a true vintage enthusiast, and that buyer arrived 1 hour before the market ended. Finally, toward the end of the day, a man approached her table. He was in his late 30s, with a rugged look and a quiet intensity in his eyes. He took his time looking at the stroller, running his hand along the fabric, and examining the metal wheels. Megan watched him closely, feeling a spark of hope. "This is from Phillips & Co., isn't it?" he asked, glancing at her. Megan blinked in surprise. She had never heard of that name before, but nodded anyway. "Yes, it's been around for a while. The lady who sold it to me said it's quite old." The buyer gave a brief nod, barely hesitating, before he pulled out his wallet. "I'll take it," he said, handing her the exact amount in cash. Megan took the bills, unable to hide her surprise. He loaded the stroller into the back of his truck without another word and drove off, leaving her both pleased and a little stunned. She hadn't expected it to go so quickly once someone showed interest. Megan felt a wave of relief. The stroller had been a beautiful piece, but it was also bulky and awkward. Now she had $200, 0 cents in her pocket and a little extra room at home. She imagined the stroller would make some baby happy, or at the very least be admired for its vintage charm in someone else's home. At that time, Megan figured that this was the end of her story related to that stroller. But little did she know that this unique sale was only the beginning. A very confusing and nerve-wracking plot twist was about to unfold before her very eyes, one that would cause Megan to deeply regret ever selling the piece. That night, Megan almost forgot about the sale as she went about her evening. But the next morning, her phone rang, startling her awake. She checked the number, not recognizing it, but answered anyway. "Hello?" A man's voice came through, loud and irritated. "Why'd you sell me this thing? What's wrong with you?" Megan froze, unsure what he meant. His voice was the same as that of the man who had bought the stroller, but this time he sounded genuinely angry. She tried to ask him what the problem was, but he continued, his tone growing louder and more intense with every word he spoke. She couldn't make out what he was saying, and after a few more minutes of continuous yelling, she reluctantly hung up the phone. Megan wasn't letting anyone talk to her that way. But his anger also raised a lot of questions, which caused a strange knot of anxiety to settle in her chest. As Megan set down her phone, her mind raced with questions. Why was he angry? And how had he even gotten her number? Megan was about to find out the answer to this the hard way. The new owner of this stroller was far from done with Megan, and his communication wouldn't end with just calling her. Megan took a shaky breath, attempting to calm herself. But steady breathing could only do so much, because just 1 hour later, She felt her heart race again when she looked out the window of her living room. There, in her front yard, stood the man from the flea market. Quickly, she closed the blinds and moved to hide behind the nearest doorway, her pulse quickening. The man started ringing her doorbell repeatedly, the sound echoing through her quiet house. Why is he here? She thought, her mind racing. He called out her name, his voice just as menacing as before. Each ring and slam of his hand against the door made Megan's stomach tighten. She pressed her back to the wall, barely daring to breathe. How did he get my number? Megan's thoughts spiraled. How does he know where I live? And what was wrong with that stroller? Her head was full of questions she couldn't answer. The relentless doorbell ringing lasted about 5 minutes, then finally, silence. Megan stood still, her heart pounding before daring to peek through the peephole in her front door. The man was walking back to his truck, which was parked against the sidewalk before her house. Megan clearly saw the frustration in his steps. That's when Megan noticed her neighbor walking toward him, concern written on his face as he approached the stranger at her door. Her neighbor's voice reached Megan's ears inside. "Can I help you, sir?" "What are you doing at my neighbor's house?" Megan held her breath, listening closely to the man's reply, hoping for answers. "I bought a stroller from her," the flea market man said. "But there was something odd inside it, something that shouldn't have been there." Megan's pulse quickened. "I thought she might know what it is," he continued, his voice slightly less agitated now. With her neighbor as a witness, Megan's fear softened enough to crack the door open. Megan's mind wondered what on earth he could have found. With the door now open, the man turned to Megan with a nod of acknowledgement. "What do you want?" Megan asked him sternly. The man spoke and started out differently than Megan expected. "Sorry if I startled you," he began. I need answers." Megan nodded, feeling her nervousness fade a bit. What did you find?" she asked cautiously. The man continued by stating that his name was Robert. Megan found this a calming thought. It was nice to finally have a name that matched the face of the guy who was frightening her up until this point. Robert then gestured toward his truck and told Megan he had brought the stroller with him. "Let's see it then. Take the stroller out and we'll look at it together," Megan said confidently, now that her neighbor was also there to step in if something went wrong. But Robert reacted a bit hesitantly toward this request. "Would you mind if we took this inside?" he asked softly. "It's not something everyone should see." Megan's eyes widened, but she managed to nod on one condition: her neighbor would join them. Megan looked at her confused neighborhood friend, feeling sadness deep inside that she was involving him in this mess. The neighbor unknowingly agreed to the weird demand, and inside Megan's home, the trio gathered around the stroller. "What is wrong with this thing?" Megan's confused next-door neighbor asked as his hands passed along the top of the stroller. He looked up and saw Robert's worried face looking back at him. Megan wondered the same thing, and since her fear of the previously intrusive Robert subsided a bit, she dared to demand answers. This was her home, and he was the one accusing her, so Megan felt it was within her right to ask him about this. "Tell me what you found, or else leave and stay gone," she said sternly. And that's when Robert showed what was hiding deep within the stroller. The man walked around the rolling crib and pulled aside one of the boards that was still halfway attached to the main body. He stuck his arm inside and wiggled it within the hollow space of the basin. Megan and her neighbor looked on in confusion, and after about 10 seconds, Robert's arm movement stopped. He took a small step back and pulled out his arm. When he did, Megan saw that he was holding a flat but surprisingly large duffel bag in his hand. "What is that?" she asked. Robert placed the duffel bag on the table beside him and opened it up. He invited Megan and her neighbor to come close and watch as he revealed the bizarre discovery he had made inside the stroller. The zipper was opened, and when Robert parted the center folding of the bag, everyone let out a loud gasp of air. "Oh my God, I swear I did not put that in there," Megan immediately laid without hesitation. Her neighbor was also stunned and could not utter a single word. Hidden deep within the innocent-looking stroller was a bag filled heavily with cash. "There must be at least $100,000 here," Megan said, astonished. Robert nodded, stating he discovered it when he arrived home with the stroller. "The wooden side panel was a bit loose, so I took it to my garage to fix it. but when I slightly edged the panel to the side, I saw that something was lodged inside, but I never expected to find anything like this. Robert said that finding this amount of money felt extremely shady. He never took Megan for someone who dabbled in criminal activity, but so much cash in one place, in a duffel bag of all things, didn't feel right. I'm not going to be part of some money laundering scheme, so if the case, take it back, Robert said. But Megan once more repeated that she had no idea the bag was there. She had bought it years ago from an older lady who apparently slept in it when she was an infant, so the stroller was very old. It must have been there the entire time, and I never noticed. Did the old lady place it in? Megan and Robert looked at each other thinking the same thing. They had to find out. This money belonged to someone, and the only person who could provide more answers right now was the old lady who originally owned the stroller. Megan ran toward her kitchen, where she kept her address book. "It has to be here somewhere," Megan said, as she ruffled through the pages. After a couple of minutes of grunted searching, Megan found it. Luckily, she was a woman who was very organized and kept every address, phone number, and name organized in binders. She pulled out the old woman's phone number and gave it a ring. To her surprise, it wasn't an elderly lady with the matching name who answered. A woman called Lewis answered, and apparently Lewis was a nurse. She explained that she worked in an old folks' home where the old lady resided, and since Beth, the old lady's name, suffered from dementia, staff held on to her phone. Sorry, she calls strangers all day if we let her keep her phone with her. "But what is your name?" Lewis asked. Megan told her name and explained how she knew Beth, and immediately when the nurse heard the word Megan, she let out a deep sigh. "We know that your name very well around here. Could you come over?" Megan was confused but agreed on the spot. The nurse sounded very serious, and with questions still unanswered, obliging seemed like the only logical response. During the call, the phone was on speaker, so Robert and Megan's neighbor also heard every word. "We'll tag along if that's okay," Robert asked. Megan had no problem with that. It was clear to Megan now that Robert had no ill intent. He just felt worried after finding unknown money in a simple flea market purchase, which was understandable. And her neighbor was simply curious at this point. He felt drawn into an adventure, one where the outcome was waiting at that nursing home. As they arrived at the nursing home, Megan, Robert, and her neighbor felt nervous and curious. The nurse, Louise, led them down a quiet hallway lined with family photos, colorful artwork, and flowers. Louise stopped in front of a modest room at the end of the hall. "She's been looking forward to meeting you," Louise said, smiling softly at Megan. When they entered, Beth sat by the window, gazing at the garden. She looked frail and had cloudy eyes, but as soon as she saw Megan, her eyes lit up. Tears welled up as she whispered, "Megan, it's really you." Her voice was weak, yet filled with joy and recognition, as if a long-lost friend had returned. Megan approached and hugged Beth, feeling unexpected warmth and affection. She sat beside her, with Robert and the neighbor standing close, silently supporting the moment. "Thank you for coming, dear," Beth said, gripping Megan's hand. "I hope the stroller served you well, and the little gift I left inside." Megan nodded, her heart pounding as she recalled the hidden cash. "Beth," Megan began, "the stroller was beautiful, but we found something inside, a lot of money. What does it mean? Why did you give it to us?" Beth's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Because, my dear, I wanted to give it to a family with a bright future ahead," she said, her eyes glistening. Beth explained that she had never married or had children, and her family had long since passed away. "When I sold that stroller to you years ago, Megan, you reminded me of what I had missed in life," Beth murmured. "I kept thinking of you as my legacy, the young mother I could pass something on to." Megan felt her eyes tear up as Beth shared these words. Beth's voice trembled as she continued, "Young mothers are our future, and kindness can improve the world. I wanted to support you somehow, and this was my way to do that." Touched, Megan felt grateful beyond words. "Beth, thank you," she whispered, squeezing the old woman's hand. "But there's another family here who could use your kindness." She gestured to Robert, explaining he was also a new father. Beth's face softened as she gazed at him, nodding in understanding. Beth looked at Robert and smiled kindly. "Consider it my legacy to you both." she said with a gentle laugh. A new generation to carry on with love and compassion. She insisted that Megan and Robert share the money, each taking half to support their families. Megan and Robert exchanged glances and spent the afternoon talking and sharing stories with Beth. She spoke of her life and how she'd dreamed of having children one day. Though fate hadn't granted her a family, her kindness allowed her to leave a lasting mark. They promised to visit her often, ensuring Beth felt connected to their growing families. As they left the nursing home, Megan and Robert felt transformed. Beth had given more than just money. She'd reminded them of the impact one life could have on another. They returned home determined to honor her memory by using Beth's gift wisely. In the following years, Megan and Robert stayed true to their promise. They used the money to build a future for their children, passing on the values she'd cherished. Beth's kindness lived on, not through children of her own, but through the love and goodwill she inspired.